Dude, this is like in 50 years, people are gonna be wearing these ironically.
Yeah, exactly. That's what.
Oh yeah. Like in maybe like 30 years, they'll be wearing them ironically. Though.
Okay.
Alright. Wave again, yes, please.
Hey, professor. Hey, professor.
Hello.
Alright, so I'm Xavier Edwards, and this is my girl Betsy. She is a boa constrictor, and today I will tell you guys all about how to take care of this species of snake. And so, growing up, one of my favorite things to do with my dad was just watch Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter, and he taught me just how to love all animals and specific reptiles. And my mom would never let me take care of or have any reptiles, snakes, lizards, or anything. And when I got to about the age of 13, I got my first snake, and from then on, I just kind of exploded. And right now, I have about 80 reptiles. So I am now going to tell you guys about how to take care of this species of snake, the boa constrictor. All right, so. Alright, so the first thing to do when picking out your pet, you want to make sure you're getting the right snake. And so the most important thing to do is make sure you're getting a healthy snake. And what you need to do for that is, first and foremost, ask the seller to hold the snake and make sure it's a nice snake, it's not aggressive. And when you're holding it, you can look for signs like pointing out that it is a healthy snake. You want to check if it's active, if it's not acting lethargic. You also want to look for if snakes carry mites, because according to a study done by the UF Wildlife Ecology Department, it shows that mites carry over 100 diseases that can be transferred to snakes. So if a snake is infested with mites, it's most likely going to be carrying other diseases as well. What you also want to look for is to see if there are any skin lesions, because lesions will mean they have scale rot, which is a disease that can easily kill a snake if not treated soon. And you also want to make sure the snake is well fed. And by that, if a boa constrictor is showing any ribs, because it is normally a pretty thick and girthy snake, that means that it is not typically well fed. And usually when snakes aren't well fed, they're under a lot of stress and will be getting a lot of other diseases as well. And so another thing you want to do is ask the seller a lot of questions about the snake. You want to ask them, if it's not a pet store or something, you want to ask the person selling it why they're selling it. If it's for a reason that isn't that they just want to get rid of it just because, then there's typically underlying issues regarding that. And you also want to ask them when the last time they were eating, and you want to ask what they're actually eating. If they're eating mice, if they're eating rats, what size they are, they're used to at this size. And you want to ask if they're eating live mice or frozen thawed mice. So, because a snake that's typically raised on live mice it's pretty hard to switch over to eating frozen thawed. So once you have your snake picked out, the next big thing is setting up the terrarium for the snake. And there's a lot of leeway that you can do, but there are mainly 3 or 4 major components that you must have in a snake terrarium. And first and foremost, you want to have good substrate. So here in this terrarium, we're using mulch. You can use mulch, coconut husk, or any other type of wood fibers that retain moisture, because these snakes come from a really humid area. So you want to make sure that the substrate is retaining moisture well. And you also want to have a water dish that is always full of water for the snake, because they will drink about once a day. So you want to make sure that they have a constant supply of water. And then snakes, especially boa constrictors, are really reclusive. So especially during the day, you want to make sure that they have a hiding area, and that can range from like a half log to something like this, which is like a stone, like a cutout stone for the snake to hide during the day. But they're normally typically active at night. And then since snakes are cold-blooded, they need a heat source. You want to keep their temperature around like 80 degrees, 80, 90 degrees, just to keep their body temperature warm. And so that is that for setting up the terrarium. And then for feeding and husbandry, these snakes, they're not, since they are cold-blooded, they don't use a lot of energy to keep their body heat up, so they don't need to eat a lot. They typically need to eat about like once a week, and you can feed them like any type of like mice or rats, and you can do frozen thawed or live. And then cleaning up after them, it's really simple. You just pick the poop out, and then taking out you want to replace the substrate about once every 3 or 4 months. So those are pretty much the basics of caring for your snake. And I guess now we will open up for questions.
Where are boa constrictors usually from? Where can you find them?
So this species specifically is from Colombia. It's a Colombian red-tailed boa constrictor, but there are different species that come from all parts of the Amazon up through Central America as well. So they have a wide range, but typically in tropical forests where it's constantly warm and humid.
So a snake like this would not be able to live outside of Gainesville?
It probably in the summer it would be able to, but it wouldn't be able to withstand the winters here, not at all. But they do have some invasive populations in southern Florida where the winters don't get that cold. So, yeah.
What's the price like usually, and then does it vary between like an independent seller and like a pet store?
It does. If it's an independent breeder, it's normally about like half the price of getting it from a pet store. Your regular boa constrictor was probably about like $50, $60 as a baby. Since this one's out, like this is a call albino, so this one would probably go for, at this size, maybe about like $300, $400. And then from a pet store, like about double that price.
Does he have a name, or how do you tell what the gender is?
So this is a girl. Her name is Betsy, and you can tell the gender by opening there's a cloaca right here, which is also where they poop and pee. But if you can do what's called popping, and like if it's a male, it'll like push out the hemipenes, which are like the reproductive organs. But if it's a female, you won't be able to pop anything out.
Oh, that's awesome.
Would you say there's any particular advantage to having a girthy snake like a boa constrictor as a pet, as opposed to like a black racer that's very long and skinny?
If you want something that is typically more calm, whereas like colubrids, like black racers, are typically more energetic and aren't as calm as a boa constrictor, python, or other constrictors. So constrictors are normally like slow-moving snakes, unless they're feeding, then they can be pretty quick.
Is the snake usually that active?
When you're holding them, yeah, but she can calm down and just chill. But she was pretty warm today, so she has a lot of energy. But
So I watched the movie Snakes on a Plane.
Okay.
If you were to spray it with pheromones, would that affect the snake's behavior?
no, Snakes on a Plane was completely inaccurate, but they do have hormone like receptors but that's typically used during breeding to see if the female is, so to say, in heat, and and she's trying to attract males, but that's about it. So,
And what do you feed them, frozen or live?
I feed her frozen thawed.
Have you ever fed her live?
I've never fed her live. I have fed some of my other snakes live, but I always want to transition them to frozen thawed because it's safer for the snake, because the rodents will fight back and they can get scars and whatnot.
Has Betsy ever bit anyone?
Betsy's tried to bite some people, but she's never actually bitten anybody. Wait, no, she has bitten. She has bitten somebody. Forgot about that, but.
What does that bite feel like?
It's not bad.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt that bad. She's not venomous.
Would
so.
she ever try to like choke you?
No. You may think like she's trying to choke you, but she's like really just getting a grip. She only tries to choke when she's feeding, and she knows we're way too large to be eaten.
Speaking of large, how big a rat can she swallow?
You typically want to feed them about 5 times the size of their head.
Damn.
5 times.
Yeah, 5 times the size of their head. They have retractable jaws that can swallow the prey whole. So,
Alright. I bet it looks so crazy, like going through the stomach.
it does.
How long does it take to digest?
About a week.
True. So they just have a really long stomach.
Stomach probably it's in the like upper half of their body. It goes from, I'd say it's about like from here to here is their stomach.
And then it goes into their intestines.
Yeah, then the intestines are throughout the rest of their body. All right, thank you guys.
Really, I guess what I should have asked is there any advantage to handling a girthier snake? Like, does it feel better in your hands?
Can you make it choke you if you wanted it to? I wanted to ask.
You said that, you just like.
Choke me.
Dude, you're fucking a girl and you have the snake right here.
Hey, she won't choke me, but he will.
Have you ever let it constrict your dick?
Twice.
What was he said? Gert, you went
Damn, I did not
You
realize.
went like 12 minutes.
Yeah.
Good question.
I don't know if like, because I know anything over 6 minutes that I said won't get counted.
Oh, true.
But okay.